In 1922, the most famous theoretical physicist on Earth traveled to Brazil, not to lecture on relativity, but to spend 3 weeks chasing butterflies across open fields with a hand-woven net. In that same decade, Europe's most formidable logic philosopher developed a strange evening ritual, standing alone in his room for an hour, whistling entire Mahler symphonies from memory with exact orchestral precision. And the author who redefined crime literature spent her free months learning the art of heavy wooden stand-up surfing in the waters of Waikiki. At first glance, these look like eccentric footnotes in historic biographies, a collection of curious anecdotes. It is a profound mistake to view them that way. These thinkers did not engage in these pursuits to waste time. They engaged in them because they understood an implicit truth. A mind that only optimizes becomes flat. They used the unautomated practice not as a respite from labor, but as an active shield to protect their own consciousness from the collapse of pure abstraction.
For over a century, the economic contract of the industrial age defined a hobby as functional recovery. You rested on Sunday so your internal machinery could function at the desk on Monday. Generative AI has broken that contract forever. Today, the architecture of optimization operates on a single mathematical imperative: collapse the distance between intent and execution towards zero. We delegate our syntax to prediction engines. We delegate our research to autonomous agents. We follow the gradient descent to the path of least resistance. The system promises total convenience, but zero friction carries an invisible cost. When every answer is delivered before the question has time to fully mature, the human capacity for deep, sustained tension collapses. We trade structural depth for instant throughput. In the mid-20th century, the French historian Fernand Braudel argued that time operates on 3 distinct levels. At the surface lies l'histoire événementielle, the short, frantic foam of daily events, news, and immediate reactions. But beneath the surface rests la Longue Durée, the silent, slow ocean currents of thought, culture, and architecture that move across decades and centuries. By taking the path of least resistance at every turn, we have trapped our nervous system entirely within the foam. The cognitive half-life of an idea has shrunk from months to seconds. When you spend your entire life reacting to zero latency stimuli, you lose the ability to drill thick planks, dicke bohren. You lose the patience required to sit with an unresolved thesis for a year, to read dense manuscripts, or to build a sovereign context. This brings us to a radical reevaluation of human effort in the age of the cognitive flood. When an algorithm can synthesize high-dimensional vector spaces in milliseconds, the value of fast, frictionless execution approaches zero. In a world where execution is free, the deliberate insertion of human friction becomes the ultimate act of self-ownership. Why do we still choose to restore a mechanical movement by hand? Why do we study positional chess dynamics, work with wood, or write long-form manuscripts without an assistant? Not because it is efficient, but because outsourcing the struggle destroys the entire purpose. A deep hobby or an unautomated craft is the one domain where an AI agent cannot act as your proxy. You do not engage in the friction to produce an efficient output. You engage in the friction because the friction itself is where human density is forged. This is the fundamental pivot. Resistance in the 21st century does not mean fighting the algorithm, smashing the tools, or screaming into the feed. True resistance is not a desperate, momentary battle. It is the construction of a lasting architecture.
You build a lasting resistance every time you step away from the terminal, every time you refuse to trade your attention for cheap convenience, every time you dedicate months of quiet focus to a single, deep, unoptimized pursuit. They can automate the execution. They can flood the information space with infinite synthetic noise. But they cannot steal the depth of a mind that has learned to love its own friction. Step off the incline. Reclaim your friction. Protect your silence. You began on the path of least resistance. You survive by building a lasting resistance.